Welcome to the Discover podcast, where we view faith as a discovery journey with Jesus to help you become the person God created you to be. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of the Discover podcast. We're so glad that you're with us. I'm really excited about our conversation today. I have two wonderful people who are with us. They are friends of mine. They are missionaries that our church supports. They are on staff at Fort Wilderness. So we're just glad to have Billy and Laura Borkenhagen join us. So everybody say hi to Billy and Laura. Yay! I don't know if people do that when we start podcasts. I don't think they clap when I introduce people, but I did today because you guys are great. So yeah. Go ahead and say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody. We're super excited to do this and to be here and be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, so go ahead and introduce yourselves. Just kind of like give a little snapshot of who you are as a family. Don't go deep into your story yet. We're going to get there. But yeah, tell us just a little bit of who you are and how long you have been where.
You want to take it away?
Sure. So we are Billy and Laura Borkenhagen. We lived in Wauwatosa and attended Meadowbrook Church for about 7 years and had 3 children while we were there. And then we are now in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, about 4 hours north. We live in Rhinelander and we serve at Fort Wilderness.
Yeah, that's great. So you guys you started attending Meadowbrook. I don't know if it was a year or so before I started coming, but you came in that like moment when there wasn't a pastor, right? We were in transition as a church. So say why you guys decided to stick around, because that's a natural time. People like walk in for that first Sunday. They're like, oh, there's no pastor here. We're out. We're going to go find a place that's stable, because in transition, it just feels unstable. But you guys like hunkered down, you stuck it out, and you went with it. So how come you decided to do that?
Can I answer this one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, the table.
Oh, sorry. So we had been married at least 6 years at that point when we were moving to Wauwatosa from the Sheboygan area. And as we were looking for a church, we went to Meadowbrook, and we had a past experience where like a new pastor was brought in when one retired like really quickly, and it was challenging for that church. And so when we walked in, and I think there was like even an update that week, and it was like the elders telling us that they weren't even looking for a pastor. They were discerning like the overall goal of the church and specifically where it was before they would look for a pastor. And I viewed that as that's healthy. Like, I like that they're going to take this moment in time when there was a transition happening to make sure that they listen to the Lord's call before even seeking out the right pastor. And so we were like, I thought it was a great sign of a healthy way to go about it. So we stayed.
Nice.
Yeah, and then you came.
And then, and then I came. Yeah. So it's interesting to me because I learned about you guys. I don't know if you remember this. You may. I learned about you guys before.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do remember. It feels like so long ago now, but I do remember the church sending me like material and things for grieving, and it was stuff that was unsolicited, and it just kind of showed up, and I remember being like, oh, yeah. Oh, no problem.
So I came, it was 2016 when I came, and you guys were one of the first people that I learned about even before I got to Meadowbrook Church, because I think that I was hired in March, but we didn't actually make the move until May. So there was a few months of just kind of connecting with the church, connecting with some of the staff, and somewhere along the way, Jen Aiken, who's a former staff member here, shared with me about your situation. And I don't know if you guys even knew that. So like I was aware of who you guys were before I even like showed up to church, because Jen shared about like you guys working through the loss of your dad, Billy. Like he had passed, I think, that spring. And so, yeah, I don't even know if you guys know that or remember that.
No, I don't know that we caught wind of that, but it doesn't surprise me too much, because the other reason that I remember as we were like landing at Meadowbrook, we just moved to the area, is that there were a lot of people in our community that we lived around that we got to know, first, who went to Meadowbrook. I remember particularly some people like having conversations about them and asking them like, oh, like, what do you like about the church and what are your thoughts on it? So there was like, it was actually like, we kind of got integrated into the community, and then the community brought us to the church. And then, there was some really good overlap there. Doesn't surprise me that, like Jen would have known that or would have given you that information. And so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you guys are no longer, obviously, at Meadowbrook. You said you live up in the North Woods. And what we're doing in this season of the podcast is we're talking about, we've titled it On the Move. And we're talking about stories and sharing stories of people who've clearly followed God's leading into something, or are able to identify moments when they've been able to see this is God at work in our lives, and have followed, not always knowing where it was going to go. And your story is very much that. So say a little bit, because you guys had very different jobs before you went to Fort Wilderness. So talk about that season of your life. Laura, you referenced being up in Sheboygan for 6 years or so. So just talk about that season of your life and what you were doing then, as well as when you moved to Wauwatosa before you worked at Fort.
Sure. So Billy and I both worked at the Kohler Company in Kohler near Sheboygan, Wisconsin, after college. Billy is an architect, and I worked in the marketing and communication department, and we had our careers started there. Very different season of life. We didn't have children yet. Billy did his master's of architecture. I was doing my MBA. And so then our move to the Wauwatosa area was because after Billy finished his master's of architecture, you give a thesis presentation, and they're open to the public. And so architecture firms come, and he was offered an interview and eventually a job in the Milwaukee area. So that was kind of, you described it to me as your dream job. And we sought out like the perfect place to live, knowing that we wanted to start a family. And we researched all the things that we wanted. And I wouldn't say that God wasn't in that, but when we get to the point of moving up north, which was not my plan, the plan of coming to Tosa was very much like, I'm pretty sure there was a spreadsheet of like what each time, there's always a spreadsheet. I mean,
With you, there is. I believe that 100%.
So we picked Wauwatosa based off of, and even the block we lived on, based off of like planning out what we thought would just be the perfect place for us. And it was really good. So we moved there. Well, we first moved into my parents' house because we bought a fixer-upper house. It was a big season of transition. But we ended up in Tosa, and like Billy said, really immediately found community, and then found Meadowbrook, and it was just a beautiful season. I look back on, and it's where I became, we had our kids and went to the zoo all the time and walked the neighborhoods pushing a stroller. That's like my memories of Tosa, which was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we were just trying to be smart about it. Like, just check all the boxes, right? Like, we want to be in a good neighborhood. We want to be like, there's got to be good schools because now we got a kid. Got a good job. I don't want to be too far from that. Like, how am I going to get to work? And just, we looked everywhere for homes, and we happened to like land there because it checked all the boxes for us. And then when we moved in, I remember we justified spending a lot of money renovating our home because it was our forever home.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the coined phrase. Like, well,
it's a coined
our
phrase.
forever home.
It's a coined phrase we no longer use.
Yeah.
After selling the forever home. Yeah.
Yes. So you were so one of my first memories of an interaction with you, Laura, was this references to the idea of like, hey, we have a growing family. You were taking staff photos for us, right? You were a photographer, maybe still are. Would you say you're still a photographer? Yeah. Take great photos, and you were doing our staff photos down at Hart Park. And I think it was you, me, and Jen standing by a bridge, and somewhere you're like, I'm pregnant. You're like, I don't know if you whispered it, but you were like, and you're like, we haven't told anybody, but we're expecting, I think it was Marie at that time. I think when I came, you already had Naomi and Will, and then you were, yeah.
I do remember that. I do actually, because I do remember that. Yeah. I'm the worst at not telling people. It's so exciting.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So any, like that season of life with three kids probably 5 and under when do I have my math right?
Well, they were 3 and under.
Oh, they're that close together.
Yeah, they're very close. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's great. Right. So when you think about that season of life, just describe that season of life, and then we'll talk about the call from living here in Tosa, living in your dream forever home, working your dream jobs to what you're doing now. So just describe that season of life here when you had 3 kids living here.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I think the word that comes to mind is building. Like we were like on all fronts, we were just building things. And for me, I was cutting my teeth in a new job, a new career, like an industry. The kids being young, like we were raising them, like, and then our house, we were renovating everything in our house. We were new to an area, so we were building community, like new to church. So when I think back, when you ask that question, that's like the word that I think would capture it the most. Like all of our energy, all of our attention at that phase in life just went to building. And it's kind of what we did before that too, really, like going through school and like you were talking about earlier, doing our masters and working without kids. Like we ran hard. Like all of our being went towards that stuff, and it kind of continued as we moved into the area in Wauwatosa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything you would add to that, Laura?
Well, just as you were saying that, Billy, I totally agree. But I was also thinking like it kind of fit what Meadowbrook was doing too, because then as we joined Meadowbrook and you came, Brian, it was like the launching of neighborhood community and like building up this church that hadn't had a head pastor for years, a couple of years.
Right. Yeah.
So that fit into that season of, because then we got involved with the church and so yeah, building, that's good.
Yeah. And we were in a neighborhood community together for I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years or so. So let's talk about the transition then from living here to where you are. So I'm gonna give you my perception of, because it was what year was it? You guys moved in 2021, right? Yeah, 2021.
Yeah.
So part of this is a discernment, you guys, which I want to hear from your standpoint, how you discerned and how it came about that you guys were connecting at Fort before you ever started working there. But here's my perception of the Borkenhagens story from my seat in the years like 2019 to 2020, because we were in a neighborhood community around that time, 2019. And then I perceived Billy as like just in this steady place. He's working his job and he's just doing the things. He biked, I remember, biked a lot. Even in the middle of winter, that's how he would get to and from work, which I just thought was crazy. Like in the middle of winter, when it's 5 degrees outside and you have to put on a jumpsuit to ride your bike to work. You did that a lot. And then I remember what I perceived as like a season of restlessness for you, Laura. And so you had Billy just steady and there was like something churning for you and you were trying hard to figure out like, what is God doing in my life? Say a little bit. Maybe you would say, Brian, you're perceiving that wrong. Talk about that from your standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and it goes along with the building, I think, and hopefully other people can resonate with this, but you reach this age where you are building, like you're done with your schooling, you're starting a job, maybe you're getting married, you're deciding where to live, you're building all these things. And in that you have some sort of idea of what it is you're building, or maybe that it's what you want to be building, right? Like there's lots of decisions and lots of years of work, especially in the field of architecture, lots of years of schooling and work that go into becoming an architect or becoming, buying a home, all that, lots of years. And so I think the restlessness that you likely saw in me it wasn't always kind of what I thought it would be. And maybe nothing prepares you for what parenting and marriage will be. But and so I think there was some restlessness in that of like, is this actually what I thought it would be or what I desire? And then we had some events, I would say unexpected events that were happening in our life that really put us both in a couple of events that put us in a place where like you cannot control, like the opposite of building, right? You build things and you're sort of in control of them. Like you can decide to go to college, you can decide to work really hard in school and get a good degree. You can decide to apply for jobs. And God can be in that and you can be discerning along the way, but you're putting in the effort. But we had a few things happen in our life that were totally unexpected. One was with a family member of mine that was going through some traumatic time and there was a legal process as part of it. And there was nothing I could do. I wanted to make it go away. I could see the pain that my parents and my brother were in with this situation. And right, you just want to fix it. You want to make it go away. And there's nothing you could do. You had to wait. I like waiting. I like doing. So yeah, definitely a lot of restlessness through that, but also a lot of relying on God, frankly, because I had to, and I hate to admit that, but I would say it's still true today. Even after going through that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to always rely on God, not just when I have to. But when you don't have to rely on God to provide food for the table because you view it as you have a good job and you can, it's just, there's something beautiful about being in the terrible restlessness of needing God.
So how would you say those things that were happening outside of your control, right? You have this expectation, we're building towards this is what it's going to look like, and then things don't go the way that you necessarily anticipate. How did you find that was starting to engage you with paying attention to what maybe God was doing in your life?
I think the word control is like really key to all of that and what you were saying. And that was in my mind when I reflect back, and specifically like with the call into missions and coming to Fort, dismantling like the perception of control was the first thing that God did and the biggest thing that he did. And that specific instance with your brother, with the situation there, was, like you said, a huge thing of like not being in control. And so that was like something that he was doing inside of us. And it was really like, when I think back to that, had that stuff not happened, we wouldn't have been in the posture to respond to it, And so I think that was dismantling the control.
I remember in the middle of that season of not being in control, it lasted, that one specific incident took about a year to work itself out. And I remember you saying, this is going to be the best, worst thing that ever happened, like to my brother, to my family. And this idea of, even though it was a bad thing, an unplanned thing, and not fun thing that we were all going through, I would say this, and I think the Bible also says it, that those are the seasons that if you let God, right, they develop perseverance, they develop your faith. You might even consider it joy.
Yeah.
To face trials of many kinds, perhaps.
Perhaps.
I don't ask for them, but when they come, you could. And I think I think the first step is like, in hindsight, seeing the positive. But when you're in the middle of it and can trust God and see, I wouldn't go as far as saying joy, as James says, but you can see what God's doing in the middle of it. It almost gets a little addicting that you're like, oh, this is good. I like this place. I like God being with me and trusting him and knowing, even though I am not in control.
Yeah. It's like the intention for which God created us, the relationship he intended us to have, was to be in a close, intimate relationship with him. And sometimes it's through our experience of hardship that we get to walk in that. And sometimes by navigating hard things, we just grow deeper in our relationship with the Lord. And like, oh, this is what I want more of this in my life.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about then, just kind of give us the story of how you went from a place here of stability and restlessness to this place of like losing control to, okay, now God is launching us into a new season and calling us to Fort. Talk through that whole season and that story.
Yeah. Well, I think so. We talked about building and we talked about control a little bit to kind of characterize where we were at. And I think what God did in both of us separately but parallel to one another was give us those experiences where like we don't necessarily have that control, and we don't necessarily, building's not bad, but what are you building for and who are you building for? And I think he showed us that we were building for ourselves a lot. And for me particularly, like there was a very pointed moment where he kind of like brings you to your knees in surrender and says, like, you're building all these things, but you're building your own little kingdom, and whether I was aware of that or not, I don't know that I was entirely aware of it, because it's tricky, because working hard is good. Like making a good home for your family is good. Like trying to be a good dad is like definitely something we should be doing, but you can do all those things for yourself. And I think what God had showed us, like the main message was, you're doing a lot of things for yourself, and I want you to do some things for me. And the way that he told us that, I think, really just practically came down to the timing of it all. So as we were going through these experiences, then right on the heels of that was like a door opening and an opportunity. And so it was like all these things weaving together, and you'd look in the rearview mirror a little bit and you'd be like, man, like now that makes sense. Now that makes sense. Now that makes sense. And I think that God is telling us we should go do this. And that's just like, I know that maybe oversimplifies it a little bit, but it does capture pretty much all of it, because everything he's done postured us. And then he passed us the ball in a way,
Yeah.
and said, all right. And we were in a place to be able to respond to it.
Yeah. So take us through some of the more specific events of how you received this call and what you did in response to it.
Yeah, so Fort Wilderness is a Christian camp in the North Woods, and I actually attended camp there as maybe a 12 or 13-year-old. I went just 1 or 2 summers to a week-long camp, but I would point to that as like, I remember where I was sitting and what the speaker was talking about when my faith really became my own. And so like, I grew up in a home that went to church and all those things, but the way I view it is like, little kids say, I love you, mom, I love you, dad, but when do they actually mean it? And for me, that moment of like actually believing for myself happened at Fort. And so Fort has always had this like special place in my heart. Billy would say that when we were dating, I would talk about it all the time.
All the time.
I did not. Like, I
It was like, it's Fort Wilderness. And I was like, okay, it's a camp in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. There's 100 of them.
Right,
Like, what's so
right.
special?
How special can it be?
right. But then I hadn't been there since I was a kid. And it was at Meadowbrook. They announced that you, Brian, were going to be a winter speaker at this camp and you were going to be gone 1 week. And they said it at church and it was Fort Wilderness. I was like, no way, Fort Wilderness.
What I've been talking about.
And so I don't know if you remember this, Brian, but I asked you and Becky, like, would you guys care if we like go and attend that camp you're speaking at, like not to be the creepy people that follow their pastor?
Right.
And you were like, oh, sure, no, come on up. So we went to a winter camp and it was great. And so we decided to make that a tradition. And the next winter, we went again. There's a camp right after Christmas. And so it worked out. So we went a second time. You were not there. And in the dining hall, they have all the like little posters of all the missionary staff. And then they have some job openings. And I will tell you, when I was standing there looking at this job opening they had for a marketing manager, I just was like, that's my job. Like I do marketing. I used to do marketing. I was home now with the kids and doing my photography business, but I was like, I could do this. I love Fort. Like I have the skills that I could do that job. So I went up to one of the staff members that Meadowbrook supports. So I felt like I kind of knew him, even though he didn't know me. But Meadowbrook, you guys post the missionaries once a week. You highlight someone. So I felt like I knew Craig Holmquist because I had seen his picture on the screen and prayed for him. So I asked him, I said, hey, that job over there, would you ever consider someone remote? Because I'm not moving, but I would love to help Fort in the marketing role. Once again, that control, like I'm not moving. And he's like, well, maybe we've never considered it. So long story, but they say, okay, they say, well, you're not going to be on missionary staff, but we'll offer you a contract to try this out working remotely, but you need to come up to camp, every so often. So we agreed to do that. And
did I ever tell you that like part of the interview process or them like doing due diligence on you was me having a conversation with Craig? Did we ever talk about that?
No.
That Craig called me.
And you gave a glowing review.
You should say thank you, Laura. I got you that job. No, but interestingly, he and I had a conversation. It was a fine conversation. I shared, here's our relationship, this and that. Yeah. And then I called him back. Like, let me tell you the real story about Laura. Just kidding. But I did. I called him back because what I told him was, and I was like, there's one other thing I need to tell you, Craig. There's one other piece of information you need to know. I was just like, there's been something happening in Laura's life for the last couple of years where she has been trying to figure out like what God has for her, and she's been intently figuring it out, and this might be the thing. And I remember, like, I don't know why I didn't say that in the first conversation, but like it was maybe a day or two in between. And I remember him was like, well, there was something about that conversation that was just super helpful for him. My guess is they had already made a decision about you by that point, but I just felt like I need to tell him, from my observation as your pastor, like you were trying, like, what does God have for me? I'm in this new season where I'm home with the kids and I'm trying to figure this out. What does it look like for me to serve and engage and it's one of those like pastoral moments for me that sticks out, like God being in the midst of something from my side of things, saying like God is in the midst of this for them and he's doing something new in their life.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Love
Yeah.
that piece. Yeah. So I was working remotely, and then like part of my contract was I had to go up to camp every so often and spend a few days like in person. And then in the middle of that, COVID hit and everyone was home. So then Billy was home full time. So they ran camps, but very differently during that summer of COVID. And so everything was outdoors. It already is mainly outdoors in the summer, but they were doing things different and they needed some extra people. And I was like, well, Billy's home. Like we could all come up and help like in the kitchen or whatever. So our whole family was up at camp, and one of the staff members approached Billy and said, hey, would you guys ever consider joining full-time staff and moving up here? Because, you know, Laura seems to be doing great in marketing and we really need an architect. There's no job available. There's no job open. There's no job posted, but we're doing all this capital campaign and there's all these projects coming up and like, we could just really use an architect. And so, you know, the story goes on from there.
I've been at a lot of camps. I've spoken at a lot of camps. Never have I gone to a camp where like, yeah, we have our own architect, right? Like that just doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah. So and this person came and talked to me and they said, if you bless it, I will go talk to Billy. But if you're like, no, we're not moving, we'll never do this. Like, I won't even go talk to your husband. And I was like, no, you can go talk to him. I'm like, go ahead. Which is interesting because, you know, just 6 months before that, when I approached Craig about the marketing job, I said, I'm not moving, but I'm interested in helping out in marketing remotely. So, you know, God was definitely working in our life and in our hearts. And so they talked to Billy. So we went home after helping out that week at camp. Fort said, why don't you guys take 30 days to just think and pray and discern, and we'll do the same because, you know, they didn't have a job posted and there wasn't a plan. And so in that 30 days, we talked to a few of our mentors and we reached out to you, Brian, and some friends, and everyone we talked to was like, well, this is so obvious. Like, of course you guys should do this, which, you know, in hindsight, like, yeah, like, of course we should do this. But it was interesting how each person we talked to saw it as you were created for this, like this, and not created, like also your life has like you're uniquely qualified for what Fort needs right now. Of course you should go.
Yeah. I would say that's true. And I think, you know, in all the times I've gone up there over the handful of years, and like what I feel, and Billy, you're not going to affirm this is true, but I feel like I'm watching you reframe and rework all of camp because you're designing all of these things from the amphitheater to the new creative art space. It's like God has put you there in a really unique season for a really unique time to be like expanding the future of this camp. And I know that you would say it's not just you who's doing it, but you sit in this really unique seat of being the guy who, along with a few other people, is doing all of that architectural engineering work to like reframe this camp for the future.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, like the table, God set the table, and like I can truly say everything you said, Brian, is like definitely it's not just me, but he's brought a team together, and everything from the financial aspect to it, to the leadership to it, to be able to give us this work to do. And it was this, like just the sequencing of it happening and us, the things happening in our life and then being called there and then coming to do the work, like the work was there and ready to do, like it's unbelievable. It kind of like gives me chills sometimes to think about it because you know it's like divinely planned.
Yeah, I mean, we could tell tons of stories, but like just as a little example, like architects can work on all different projects. But like you had specifically worked on an assembly space with seating. Crazy. So because there's different codes, this is the wife's perspective. Like there's different codes, all these things that they have to know to design each individual space. And so he had specifically worked on a project that like, you know, he could use all that knowledge for the amphitheater project. And that keeps happening where he's like, but I actually have experience in that because we did this. So it's just been really neat to see those little you call them little, but they're not. Like you see how God had prepared and paved the way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, there are a lot of stories like that. And those things are encouraging now because as much as we talk about it here too, like it reminds me just how clear God's calling was at the time too. But even with that clarity, like it's easy to oversimplify it a little bit. like in your head. You know, we do that about anything, I suppose, that we walk into. And then you get down the road and you bump into like challenges or opposition of any sort, you know. And then it's those small things oftentimes that he gives us just to like keep saying like, yeah, no, this is right. Like this is where I'm leading you. Like
Yeah.
the specific experiences or the things that he did way long ago that now come into play here that it wasn't even on your radar, you know.
Mhm.
So that way when you doubt like the big picture, like, oh man, is this right? Like what, you know, we can never go back.
Mhm.
Like we can never go back. But then little things like that happen where it's like, okay, yes, like God, you're still guiding our steps. Like we're on course.
Yeah.
So you guys moved in 2021. So you've been there, 4.5-ish years, if I've got my math right.
Yeah.
So talk just a little bit about what it's been like to continue to see God work, both in your life and in the wider ministry of Fort Wilderness. Now that you're there and you're planted and you're settled.
Yeah. So I think something we've been talking about being, we measure it by summers because summer is like an intense period when you work at a camp. So we've been 5 summers up here. And the word that you said when we were in Tosa, the word was building. And I think the word now, I would say established, but like God established it. Like I view it as like we were building, which once again isn't in and of itself a negative, but it is a negative if you're building your own kingdom. But I would say we've been established and all by God. Like we are not living in the town that I would have picked, but yet we are established here and it is where we're to be. I feel it in so many ways in not just our at Fort, but like because we're in this town that we didn't necessarily pick to live in, the people we've met, the opportunities we've had here, the community here, the things that we're doing outside of Fort here, it just feels very established.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, our dog is barking.
Yeah. Who's your friend in the background?
That's the dog I said I'd never have.
The place you'd
I've
never
never
live and the
discovered
job
that
you'd
I
never
wouldn't live
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think another, like, just to build off of that a little bit, what God is showing us is that even though he had a specific call for us at Fort Wilderness and we were saying yes to that, that's kind of like what we thought we were saying yes to. And now that I look back at that, it's a little bit of a small view of a calling, you know, like if God is doing great things through the ministry at Fort, like he specifically used us, I 100% believe that, and he led us there and called us there, but to think that that's all it is, I think is too little. And what he's showing us is like that he's established us here not just for, you know, to be a missionary at Fort Wilderness, but to be a missionary to the like our whole orbit of people and life. And I think in some sense we had a sense of that when we were in Wauwatosa and we kind of tried to live that way. But now it's become even more pronounced to us. And just like we had specific roles at Fort, right? You were doing marketing, I'm doing like campus architecture stuff. But one thing he's taught us both, I think, is that you have specific roles in your community too. Like you are uniquely qualified somehow to build his kingdom, like even with our neighbors. And so then we can start to point to things where like, man, the specific house he provided us with, the specific neighbors he put us next to, the opportunities like within the local school, whatever it is, like just being believers in our lives, you know, it has been a lesson to me. And Fort is a cool tool for that. Like we can leverage Fort and like use that in some ways, but in other ways, like it's completely outside of that. And that's a broader calling I think that everybody has, but it took us leaving and going to a place, I think, to really become aware of it.
For sure. And I think for us, it's our first time, quote unquote, working in ministry, which I use quotes because what you just described, Billy, is like, if you are a Christian, you are called to ministry, like go and make disciples of all nations. Some of us get the privilege of doing that for our quote job, like what a joy. But like, it's not that is a small view to think that that's your only calling. And once again, there's just so many stories of God providing. And can I share something that just came to my mind?
Yeah.
So I think one way that like when we were talking about that control piece, and I think everyone might resonate with wanting control. So when you're on staff at Fort Wilderness, you raise support. And so Meadowbrook supports us and the money goes to Fort. And that's how our paycheck happens. And so individuals support us, people support us. So when we were in that support raising time period, I mean, we're always needing to do that, but like before you move up, you have to raise support. There was a point that I had a meltdown. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Front and
So,
center.
like,
In fact, I can tell the story if you want.
so we were reaching out to friends and family and telling them our story and that we're getting called to Fort, but we need to raise this support. And that already is just like money is an awkward conversation for most. And so like some people had sent one-time gifts, but we didn't really have like monthly supporters yet. And so we're like loading up the kids to go to my folks for Thanksgiving. And I'm melting down because anytime you're loading up kids to go somewhere for a trip, I might melt down.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we've got a few one-time supporters, but we really need monthly supporters. And it's gonna be like snowing a lot up there. And like we're gonna need a bigger snowblower. And I'm spiraling, right? And wasn't there a third thing I was complaining about?
The snowblower was an odd specific thing that you laughed.
Well, everyone we would tell that we were moving was like, it's cold up there. Like we could have been called to some faraway place and we're called 4 hours north. And everyone is like, they get a lot of snow up there. And so then I started like panicking about that. So we're driving to my folks and my phone starts ringing and I see that it's someone that I did a Bible study with like a year ago from BSF. And so I answer the phone. I think it's odd she's calling me. She's like, hey, I think I saw that you are becoming missionaries. Do you need monthly supporters? I was like, yes.
And a snowblower.
Right? And a snowblower. Oh, just wait. So I have this conversation with her and she's like, someone that we supported just retired from, ministry and we'd love to support you monthly. Like someone I didn't reach out to, wasn't on my radar, but God provided. I was like, whoa. So then we get to my folks and we're unloading the kids and my dad walks up to Billy. First thing he says to him when he walks in the door, you guys are moving north and there's going to be a lot of snow up there. I'm not as strong as I used to. I'm going to get a smaller snowblower. Do you guys want to take this large one? And Billy just shoots me this look across the room. And the immediate conclusion is that you should complain about things.
Right. If you complain, God answers. That's what the moral of the story is.
Really, like that story stuck in my mind because that was like as we were moving. But that I could tell a bunch of more stories that when you're put in a place that you must rely on God, the reason I was freaking out was because there was nothing I can do. I can't twist someone's arm to support us at Fort Worth. And I don't want to twist people's arms. I want people to raise up that want to give to what we do there. And that's great. And that's happened. And Meadowbrook has continued to support. It's great. And I'm sure the same is at church. Like you don't want to twist people's arms to give to Meadowbrook. You guys did a capital campaign to give out of God moving inside them. Right. And so you can't actually control it. Even with a great marketing campaign, you can't control it.
It's true.
And so I just look back on that time and that snowblower and it reminds me.
Yeah. I mean, that's really neat, right? You think of all the little things that you could see as barriers to why we shouldn't do this. This is hard. This is uncomfortable. We're not well equipped or whatever. We don't have the right equipment. We don't have the right people supporting us. And it's kind of like God always is inviting us to take a step. And it may feel like you're stepping into the unknown. It may feel like you're stepping into a big, uncertain situation. But as you take those steps of faith, like you see that he starts to provide and give you everything you need right when you need it. And even when it's like little things like a snowblower, or maybe a big snowblower because there's a lot of snow up north, So
Which when you start to see it that way and after experiencing those little things, it starts for me, I'll speak for myself, I suppose. Like it started to shift my view on like following him and doing what he does. And the shift was from like a fear based to more of like almost like an adventure or like a journey. Like this is actually kind of exciting because we gotta remind ourselves like he is on mission. Like he is eternal. Like he's all these things. So when you really like rationally think about it, it's silly to worry about a snowblower. I didn't say that in the moment when that happened, but
you were just nodding in support, right? Yes.
But that was huge for me. And even after being at Fort, and I would say to this day, like the thing that God has grown inside me is shifting from the reason I built so much was out of fear because I wanted security.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a safe home. I wanted to have, all this stuff, right? And that I could just sleep good at night, which isn't a bad thing, but I was trusting my own building for that security. And so God has really taught us a lot of times through those intimate detail moments like that, of saying like, don't you believe like I am in this? And that helps me personally shift from an attitude of like fear and getting security to more of like, all right, let's go. Like where are the dragons? Like let's go get them. And that it's not a natural way for me to feel. So it's a constant like thing I need to embrace.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I love
like
that.
the posture of like, I will build my kingdom to
Yeah.
he will establish his kingdom.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're part of that story.
Yep.
And although it sounds more secure to say, I will build my kingdom, it's way more secure to say he will establish his kingdom.
Yeah.
And I get to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the way you frame that. Like you're called to this adventure, like in to step out in faith. There might be, again, a whole lot more that you don't know. You might know a little bit, and there's way more that you don't know than you do know. But the invitation is to like follow and trust God in order to experience that adventure, in order to experience those unique moments. At some point, you got to take a step of faith. And so, thinking for people in our context, people in your context who might be listening, like what are the things, what are the excuses, what are the barriers that you are putting up? Like, I can't because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, what if you just take a step towards those and say, let's see what God does with this. Let's see how God makes a way or takes that wall down or reroutes the path so that we can ultimately continue to follow him and wherever he's leading us.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, this has been a great conversation. We had a handful of technical difficulties along the way. So hopefully as those who are watching this, you get to watch it or listen to it and you don't see any of those because we're going to edit them out. But thank you guys for your patience and hanging in there with us. And yeah, you guys were here not that long ago, actually, which was great to have you here. So it's always fun when you get to be back in Tosa. It's fun when we as a church, whether it's me speaking at camp or we got youth group coming up or just people who are, vacationing up there, it's always fun to keep that relationship going. So as we close out, anything specific that is kind of on your mind for, what's next for you guys or how we could be praying for you, or just as you think about closing out 2025, anything that's like just stirring there that you want to share?
Man, just all the things that you guys pray for. I mean, probably your own prayer list too, of just being a mom and a dad and raising our kids. And the ministry at Fort is really good. We're kind of in a time of quiet now, which is really good because of the lapse between like fall and winter stuff starting up. So just pray that it'd be restful for us and that we would just be a good husband and wife and a good mom and dad and be a good witness in that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I would just add to that, like this can all sound like pretty with a bow on it, right? Like we're here now and we're established, but like the reality is like camp isn't going to need an architect forever, right? They're not. Like there's a season where they've been doing all these projects, and I would share that like we're at great peace with that. And like Billy, we don't need to make the show an hour longer. Like he does other things at camp too, but I just think it would be a fun way to end it of like, this adventure is going to continue.
Yeah.
And it's not like you take one step into ministry and you're set,
No.
it's a daily, weekly, and we're looking forward to like, we'll see what happens. And it's going to be great.
Yeah. So can I add just a little bit to that?
Yep.
A moment ago, because that's a really good point. We were talking about like fear driven versus adventure or mindset approach to things. And that is a big thing because where I come from, like when you have a job in an architecture firm, like I kind of thought I was going to retire there, and I could look at people who are older than me and say, okay, that's the job I'm working towards. And they sit you down every year and they say, where do you want to get? Like we want to develop you and give you opportunities for this. That was I realize now, a huge aspect of security for me. And, in some ways, like that structure's gone. So that has been the huge mind shift for us, I think, is really like, it's more like an open-handed, like, okay, God, like if this was the next thing for something you were doing way back, then this must be the way back thing that you're doing for something next.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's working it from all angles of time. And so it's pretty cool to embrace that and think about that. But just pray. So that's a great prayer request that you brought up, Laura, of just for God's continued direction and continued guidance, and for him to hold our hearts in a place where like we see that as like exciting. Not that it's going to be easy, but that it's the right thing to do because it's where he wants us and it's where he's going to lead us.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I really appreciate you guys joining us today. Really grateful to know you and really excited to see what the future holds, whether that's this next summer or in a couple years. I'm confident that God will continue to do really good things in and through you. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Brad.
Yep. All right, Meadowbrook Church and anybody else who's listening, we will see you next time on the Discover podcast. Until then, grace and peace to you all.